Colonel and intelligence officer, Texas Public Policy Foundation Vice President Chuck DeVore, and former Navy SEAL, Wisconsin congressional candidate Derek Van Orden. Gentlemen, thank you for sticking around. Good to see you back. I want to start by playing something from Senator Mark Warner talking on Special Report about what the air situation is, the air defense, the air offense situation is in Ukraine and their forces.
The drones have been extraordinarily effective. And one of the things that's not often reported is Ukraine actually has quite a number of airplanes left in their Air Force. They've not flown them that much. They're only flying a few sorties because the Russians control most of the airspace. So we want to get them what they need as quickly as possible.
So, Derek, how does the Ukrainian Air Force operate with all of those massive barriers in their way? Is it an effective tool for them right now?
Absolutely. There's contested airspace, and it's very telling that Vladimir Putin has not been able to establish air superiority over Ukraine. Both of the Russians and the Ukrainians have S-300 systems of varying age, but the Ukrainians are mounting a very good fight. The transfer of MiG-29s to Ukraine is no different than us providing surface-to-air missiles that have been shooting down aircraft. If we were to give them pilots and ground crews, that's different. If the aircraft were to fly from a NATO base, that's different. But providing the Ukrainians MiG-29s for them to augment their Air Force with is totally appropriate and should be done immediately. We have to make sure that Vladimir Putin understands that the hard line is if he puts one foot into a NATO country, it's game over. But up until then, we need to do everything we can to provide support to the Ukrainians.
I want to play something, too, from General Jack Keane. We talked with Jonathan Hunt earlier about what's happening in the South, in Mariupol and other places that are just being absolutely ripped apart. They are scenes of utter devastation and cruel brutality, death and destruction. This is what General Jack Keane says about what's going on in the South.
They're trying to cut the Ukrainians off from the sea. 70% of their imports and exports are dependent on access to the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. So this is a major strategic objective for the Russians, and they're struggling.
So, Chuck, a couple of things there. The general has told us he thinks it looks like there are two different wars going on here in the North and the South. So we know about the efforts in the South that it's just sort of a scorched earth situation. But the general there said he thinks in some respects the Russians are actually still struggling in the South. What do you assess with what's going on there?
Well, what I think we need to be prepared for is for a long war. This war is going to go on longer and cause much more civilian suffering, millions more refugees than have already happened. And we need to do everything we can to keep Ukraine in this fight, to help them continue to fight Russian aggression. And to that end, I've been working with the Ukraine Working Group. It's a group of about 50 national security academics and veterans who are coming up with ideas to help Ukraine stay in this fight. Things like training Ukrainian forces in NATO countries, but training them on how to use these shoulder-fired anti-tank and anti-aircraft missiles, training them on how to use drones and re-equipping them with drones, asking for foreign pilots and foreign ground crew people to go to Ukraine and volunteer and thus be more effective than simple infantrymen. So there's all kinds of things we can do. Also, logistics. Why can't we, for example, repair and refurbish some of the captured Russian equipment as well as the broken down Ukrainian equipment, repair and refurbish them in a NATO country and ship them back across the border? This is going to be a long conflict, and we need to prepare for that.
Yeah, and so much of this is about NATO and about Putin's, death wish, essentially, that Ukraine and others not become any part of that. He doesn't want that on his borders at all. So, Derek, you had mentioned NATO and the possibility of him going on another incursion or invasion there. Do you think he would possibly risk that at all, in your estimation?
No, I don't think he'd do it on purpose, but we have to understand that Vladimir Putin is not operating from he's not operating from the perspective of taking a rational view of what's going on. He should not have invaded Ukraine to begin with. The math simply does not add up. But part of the problem is what we call the fog of war, the ambiguity of what we will and will not do. The Biden administration has done an absolutely horrible job of making sure that Vladimir Putin understands exactly what the red lines are. Article 5 of the NATO treaty must remain intact. If Vladimir Putin puts one foot within a NATO country, then we must crush crush them completely. That is the hard line. Providing military assistance is something that should be done, but Vladimir Putin has to understand that he cannot muck about with NATO. And how you do that is you stop trying to be too clever by half like the Biden administration's been doing, and you just flat out say, this is the line, and we must hold that. Otherwise, there are no international norms if we don't do that.
All right, Derek and Chuck, thank you both very much for lending us your expertise. Good to see you.